Hello, and welcome to Bake to the Future. Today's episode is a special one. We're joined by leaders from two remarkable baking companies, Gonnella Baking Company and Amoroso's Baking Company, both which have been feeding communities for more than 100 years. These family businesses have adapted to changing consumer tastes, evolving technologies, and shifting marketplaces, all while staying true to their core values and commitment to quality. Today, we'll talk about how they've innovated across generations, responded to changing consumer trends, and what the next chapter of growth looks like for companies with such deep roots. Welcome to you both. To start, I'd love for each of you to briefly introduce yourselves and your company.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me. My name is Jesse Amoroso. I am fifth generation in our family business, which was started by my great-great-grandfather in 1904. Prior to coming on board into the family business, obviously doing many short stints growing up over winter break and so forth, whether it was helping with deliveries, sales, or working in the warehouse, worked for a short stint in investment banking. And prior to coming into the business, wanted to experience something else, be sure that it was truly where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. Since joining over, 15 or so years ago, I have pretty much worked in every facet of the business. And today I currently serve as our president and chief operating officer.
Thank you. Dave.
Thanks, Anne. It is great to be here with you and Jesse today, and especially chatting with another fellow 100-year-plus bakery like Amoroso's. I'm David Marcucci. I'm the president of Gonnella Baking Company. I've been at Gonnella for 23 years. I worked outside the business like Jesse worked outside of his. I worked outside of Gonnella for 9 years before joining Gonnella. We were founded in 1886, and this year we're celebrating 140 years. And what makes that milestone especially meaningful is that we remain family-owned and operated, and we are now in our fourth generation with our fifth generation working in the business. And in an industry where many long-standing bakeries have been acquired by larger corporations or private equity, we are still very proud to be independently run and guided by the same family and the same family values that built our business. Today, we serve customers across food service, convenience stores, retail in-store bakery, then private and across private label. And we've evolved from a neighborhood bakery into a modern frozen dough and baked frozen supplier. But we have not lost our commitment to quality and forming true partnership with our customers, which is what's got us to this point thus far.
Well, both your companies have surpassed that 100-year mark, which is no small feat. What do you think has been that most important factor in sustaining growth and growing a baking business across generations? Sounds like you both are hitting that fifth generation at this point.
I think for us, Anne, it's a continued unwavering commitment to upholding our century-long standard and tradition of quality, customer service, innovation, but maintaining a focus on our core business and our core customers at the same time. Through that, I think we manifest and demonstrate that by focusing on growing our team of really strong and skilled team members that continue to bring great ideas and fresh perspectives. And like I said, in today's world, there is such a requirement, whether we like it or not, to continue innovating. I think one of our mantras is to keep the main thing. And while that is very important, it's also important to stay relevant and to continue innovating, to maintain customer appeal and sustaining growth of the business. So for us, I think it's really just continuing to focus on those core values, but in doing so, broaden our ability to do so by strengthening our team.
Yep. For us at Gonnella, we see sustaining the business for over a century requires a careful balance between respecting our tradition and embracing modernization. So we have to continually invest in our people and our processes and our products, but understand where our customers are going with relation to where we've been. So we're always trying to evolve without breaking trust with any of those groups. One of our biggest foundations of success has been our folks. It's very common at Gonnella to see employees retire with 20, 30, and even 40 years of experience. As a matter of fact, on last week, Thursday, we celebrated retirement of an employee who had been with us for 38 years. And that kind of longevity speaks to the culture we've built and that those individuals are truly the backbone of our business and they're the consistency behind our products.
Dave, that really resonates with me. If I could add, one of the special things that I just thought of as you're sharing that and that I'd share with you, Anne, and to the audience is that it's a very special opportunity and experience for someone like myself to be able to work alongside and help guide and direct folks who really have known me since the day I'm born, right? In some cases, they or their parents or even grandparents worked alongside other family members in previous generations in my family. So I think with that comes a certain sense of pride, but also responsibility for sustenance and sustainability to continue providing those opportunities that in turn, support the business by showing folks that we care about their lives, their livelihood, and their families, not just their day-to-day activity. And so I think that's particularly important to us. And Dave, that really resonates with me based on what you just shared.
The people really are the backbone of the commercial baking industry. So you both started to touch on this as we were answering that last question, but how have you balanced staying true to your heritage brands and where you came from, your roots, while also modernizing operations, product lines, and customer engagement?
So we see our heritage as an experience and as not nostalgia. While we are incredibly proud of our 140-year history, that longevity has only been possible because we've continually adapted to the changing marketplace and to the customer needs. And think back to where we started, right? We were making deliveries by horse-drawn carriages. And as the industry evolved, so did we, right? Modernizing cars become into it. Now distribution methods become, and now we have these complex supply chains, as I'm sure Amoroso has the same, and things in distribution of products that weren't even imagined 50 years ago. And recently, even outside of the distribution process, we completed a significant upgrade to the production lines at the facility I'm sitting in. And at the same time we did that, we opened up a R&D and innovation center so that we can advance product development and we can collaborate closely with our customers, get them in to our facility and really sit down and talk with them and work with them on what their needs are and really develop hand in hand with the customer. And we think that kind of conversation really does lead to the best opportunities for the customers and for Gonnella to grow together. And one of the keys for us in maintaining modernization is that customer product expectations. As we continue to evolve and we become more efficient, we also know that the customers expect something from the bread that we're producing. And we're always working very hard to make sure that our products are performing as the customers expect and as we expect, regardless of what's happening in the background of how they get there.
For us at Amoroso's, curiosity is probably the driver of all of that. And it's really at the crux of all of that. Staying curious and constantly asking questions, why or why not? Why are we doing this in a certain way or in a certain manner? And not to be shackled by the constraints of the way that we used to do things or that we've always done it that way, right? So I think really for us, it's staying curious and pushing people to remain curious and to be curious. Through that, as Dave talked about, it's finding ways to harness our authenticity. And in my mind, authenticity isn't just about being authentic because, for instance, we're an Italian heritage brand, right? In my mind, and at Amoroso's, we believe that being authentic is being authentic to the product or the process that you're doing or that you're offering, right? Whether it's making, a true style ciabatta or our traditional hearth-baked Italian rolls, or whether it's making products under our brand of products under Ginsberg, whether it's bagels or rye bread, making sure those things are done in an authentic manner, presented in an authentic way, and offer an authentic experience is a way that we continue to stay curious to be authentic, right? Moving into ways that we evolve and stay relevant. Dave touched on this as well, but it's not vacating core aspects of your process or your product, right? We, in many cases, can't automate certain aspects of our process, but we continue to try to ask ourselves, where can we? And how does that benefit the quality and the customer experience all around? How does that improve our ability to be competitive from a supply chain perspective? That drove us to relocate into a new facility about 10 years ago, which was a very challenging undertaking. But, looking back, it was a necessary step that we had to take in order to remain relevant, to remain competitive, and to pave the way for growth for the next 120 years. So I think it's all coming back to staying curious and asking questions on why and how can we improve.
And a big part of the modernization is consumer preferences, which are always changing and shifting, and especially have done so over the past few decades. How have you guys both been staying ahead of or responded to these evolving demands?
At Amoroso's, we try to listen to the voice of the consumer as much as possible, whether through direct conversations, reviews, social media, direct messages on social media, and the various and myriad forms of communication. But everyone says it, right? It's all about the conversation today, not just a message or a directive, but really hearing the voice of the customer and the consumer, which, while it might be challenging or sobering to an extent sometimes, it really forces us all to be on our best and in a constant manner, looking to grow and to be better. In addition, I think that we try to analyze trends in the industry, whether it's attending the ABA convention, which we just did 2 weeks ago, which there is just such an amazing wealth of information that is presented, the ability to network with folks like Dave and all of our other associates in the industry, the ability to just share wins, losses, challenges, things that we're working on is incredibly beneficial. In addition to that, we try to stay relevant and hearing the voice of the consumer and the customer by attending trade shows throughout the year, whether it's for retail or food service. Sometimes those are distributor shows, right? So we're hearing voices and kind of touch points from all aspects of the industry, whether it's a consumer, whether it's a purchaser, a distributor, someone more so on the supply chain side of things. And for us, I think it's important to pool all that information, right? And then internally, we really kind of cross-pollinate. We bring together an internal team of people from all departments. And that in turn, I think, allows us to all hear each other's perspective on ways that we can find mutual improvement to provide in our everyday experience, in our products, and in the way that our customers enjoy and consume our products.
Anne, you're absolutely correct. Consumer preferences have accelerated over the last few decades, and we've seen a growing demand for cleaner ingredients and premium qualities, global flavors, and smaller size loaves and better for you options. So we've taken the approach that we want to translate those into practical solutions for our customers. It's not just enough to simply recognize a trend, like we can see that, but we need to focus on developing products that help those operators execute those trends successfully in the real world environment. So, like we see in our convenience in our food store programs, we made bread products that sustained in a hot hold and cold hold environments. Again, something from a traditional Italian bakery would have been unthought of 30 years ago, but yet that's what the consumers needed. And that's what the products that we had to start to focus on. And as mentioned earlier, our new R&D center plays a real important role in that process. It allows us to work together with the customers to develop products that meet the evolving consumer expectations while still delivering consistency and simplicity they need to execute on their end. Ultimately, we're not just trying to respond what the consumer wants. It's part of it, but we're trying to design products that help the customers deliver those expectations in a reliable manner. So then in the process, what we're doing is we're turning that trend into a sustainable program for both us and for them.
So as both of you have 100-plus-year-old companies that span multiple generations of employees and leadership, you both mentioned fourth, fifth generations are working today. How do you preserve that institutional knowledge while also attracting new talent and fresh ideas?
So, a huge advantage of being 140 years old is the institutional knowledge that we've built. And over the generations, we've learned what works and what doesn't work. And that knowledge is a huge asset to the company and to our customers. At the same time, that experience alone is not enough to sustain the business. We need to, and we do actively bring in new talent with fresh perspectives. Otherwise we run the risk of getting stuck, and that's the way we've always done it. So when we look in areas like operation and technology, data, and go-to-market strategies, we need new perspectives in those arenas all the time, and we're actively seeking that. We've found that when we pair the experienced veterans with some new thinking, that's the best recipe for success. Our long tenured members provide a depth and stability of knowledge that is super important. And then the new leaders bring some speed and innovation and more creative approaches. And we also try to make an environment for the entire organization where, in particular, long-term employees feel free to take a chance and not be afraid to make a mistake, because that can be very paralyzing. So as long as we're making decisions that are reasonable and are fact-based, we want to open up that conversation so that people feel free to go ahead and make that change and not be shackled by what was always done. And again, when those two groups collaborate, the new and the old. We find that knowledge evolves and we don't become static. And we think it preserves the best of our heritage while continuing to grow and innovate.
For us, I think, again, it comes back to curiosity, right? How are we staying curious about our institutional knowledge? And as Dave mentioned, though we're not 140, we're about 122 years, into this, there are many great things that come with institutional knowledge and tribal knowledge, as we call it. But the requirement to balance that with innovative thinking and challenging status quo is so critical and hypercritical. Otherwise, one will overshadow and consume the other. And so for us, I think it's important culturally to really observe and support that balance in a very healthy manner. One of the ways that we've recently started doing this is probably not new for many other folks or some of the folks listening to this, but really structuring organized internship programs where we're working with local institutions, mostly colleges, for instance, the St. Joe's Food Marketing Academy or the Drexel Food Lab. Being that we're in the greater Philadelphia area, we are fortunate that we have some of these great institutions. And as we know, there are many of these around the country that many of us can take advantage of and provide benefits to as well. But the ability for us to structure that transfer of knowledge and a very focused effort on educating and kind of bringing forth the next generation is critical, because in our pursuit to find that balance between the institutional knowledge and a new way of thinking, I think is very important. Speaking of culture, Dave touched on this, but promoting a healthy environment, one in which people feel empowered, they feel supported, and they feel comfortable to take risks, make mistakes. In my case, I know I've probably learned more from the mistakes that I've made than from the things that maybe I haven't made some of those mistakes on. And so I think promoting the understanding that trying things that might not work is okay. Like Dave said, as long as there is rational thought and rhyme and reason and consideration as to why something is being proposed in a certain manner, then I think it's important that we all support those things, because we want people, again, to remain curious and stay hungry. That in turn, I think will also just continue to drive innovation, right? The ability to try things without the fear that they might not work is hypercritical for us to be able to innovate, come up with great product development ideas that hopefully, manifest into on shelf or kind of in service products. But again, I think it all comes back to culture. It comes back to curiosity.
Well, before we wrap up, I'd love to ask each of you, what advice would you give to emerging baking companies that hope to still be thriving 100 years from now?
That you're not just selling bread, that we're actually supporting someone else's business. That means we're going to try to design products or offer solutions that simplify their operations, deliver consistent quality, and really help them succeed. Without those customers buying the products, we don't have a business. And so we also want to think about the products and the environment that thrive. So our business is obviously fundamentally important, but we need to understand what they need to support their business and how can we meet them to help them support their needs. And I think the final thing that will help businesses survive is evolve before you're forced to. Try and stay in front of that trend a little bit. The companies that survive aren't the ones that defend the past. They're the ones that adapt early. And we found that if you build the trust and protect it through change, that longevity takes care of itself.
Really well said, Dave. In a short manner, I would summarize it in 3 ways. First, don't compromise on quality. Your quality is your reputation. It's what you're remembered for, and it's what's going to enable you to grow your sales volume in your business. 2, keep the main thing the main thing. Don't try to be everything to everyone, for if so, you'll become a master of none. And I think we've all seen or heard stories where that transpires. And lastly, consume your products. Make sure that you are a believer in what it is that you're making and selling, because at the end of the day, that is the most true form of authenticity when representing your brand and your company.
Thank you both so much for sharing your insights and for representing 2 incredible examples of longevity and innovation in the commercial baking industry. It's so inspiring to see how companies with such deep roots continue to evolve, grow, and lead, especially for future generations. If you're a prospective member or a member of the American Bakers Association, we'd love to hear from you. Email membership@americanbakers.org anytime to get connected to the ABA team. Let us know what you thought of the show by emailing hello@americanbakers.org. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.